Welcome to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast, powered by Blue Wire. Shout out to the new company. My name is Michael-Shawn Dugar. You guys know where to follow me on whatever Elon Musk is calling that app these days. My at name has not changed. It's also right under my chin at Mike Dugar, Mikedugar. It's the same thing on Blue Sky as well. And make sure you follow us, like, subscribe, all that good stuff on the following platforms. YouTube, go ahead, like, subscribe. Really need that. Really need that. Seahawks Man to Man on Instagram as well and on TikTok. That's Seahawks Man, the number 2 man across all 3 platforms. Thank you in advance for that love and support. Chris, go ahead and talk to him.
What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Christopher Kidd. You can follow me on Blue Sky and Twitter at CKIDD206, and that is CKID206.
All right, Chris, we got a little theme going here. We read text exchange is here. Let's do that again here. Let's see. Can I read? I want to read your text from the first quarter. This is from the first quarter of the Seahawks game. Yeah. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Just turned the game on. I see I missed nothing. I said, this game sucks. I don't even think we need to do the post game show. We can just record tomorrow when I get back. And then you said, easy money. I'll watch the rest, but yeah, this ain't good. And that was all in the first quarter. And we had some more, but that was off rip. And I read that now to explain a little bit of like, that was our thought process for you guys wondering why we didn't do a post game show. That is why. That game did not warrant that at all. I also had a 7 a.m. flight Monday morning. So I was like, yeah, nah, stay up late to talk about that and then fly back. No, it's good. Also, Chris, that ended up working out timing wise, because if we had done a show, then they would have fired Ryan Grubb like 3 hours after this show would have released, and I would have been pissed. I would have been very pissed. I would have tracked down Mike Macdonald's cell phone number and called him and left a very angry voicemail if he had done that. Thankfully, we waited, and now we can dive into that because I feel like, Chris, that is the news of the day. Timing works out perfect for us. Unfortunate for Ryan Grubb, of course, but perfect for us to dive into the most pressing news. The Seahawks have fired Ryan Grubb after 1 year as the OC.
Well, yeah, perfect timing is weird to say in this scenario. I know you mentioned Ryan Grubb. Not perfect time for him because I'm sure he wanted to return and just learn about being offensive coordinator in the NFL, the next level, and take that next step. And I mean, hell, Mike, you even mentioned it. You thought, maybe he does get a second chance, but you were 50-50 just because of, when we watch the tape, it's so like, damn, dude, run the football, like at bare minimum. And not to mention your head coach, the guy that's running everything, is, I feel almost every week in some form or some way he's alluding to, my G, I need you to run the football more. I know we suck at it, but it just keeps that deep. So yeah, without any more of me adding to that, Mike asked for Twitter questions, and we got a bunch. And some of them were actually about Ryan Grubb before he got fired, which is crazy. Not that you guys are foreshadowing it or figuring that would happen, but here we are, right? So we'll go ahead and get things off with some questions about Ryan Grubb. And the first one comes from Jeffrey at JOME253. What week during the season, Mike, do you think Mike Macdonald realized he wasn't aligned with Ryan Grubb?
This is a great way to phrase this question. I really enjoyed this. Say the at name again. It's the name of the user. Shout out to you because I rock with that. Let me go through the Seahawks schedule because I have an idea, Chris. I'm curious what you think. I'm gonna say, and this is how fascinating this kind of time is a flat circle thing we are in with the Seahawks. I think it was the Giants game. I think it was that early that I was like, hey, man, is he just not listening? Like it may not have been as alarming as I phrase it there, but if I remember correctly, let me look at the box score because I don't have to remember. We have the internet. So, yeah, we'll see. If you remember that game, so Ken Walker carries it 5 times for 19 yards. Zach has 2 carries for 11 yards. And they lose the game, obviously. Their worst loss of the season by far. It felt bad in real time, and it just only got worse as the season went on. But also, that was the first time that Grubb basically was like, "Yeah, you guys are right." Like he got asked, like, "What's up with getting Ken Walker the ball?" He was like, "Yeah, no, I just got to get Ken the ball. It's that simple, you know." And it's that type of stuff that sometimes it's not football, not that complicated. Are you getting the ball to your best players? Yes. Stay employed. No. Hit the unemployment line. You know, and that was the first instance, and that really stood out. Obviously, I don't know if that's the correct answer, but that would be mine. I just feel like that was probably the beginning of like, yo, man, this team stinks that we lost to for one. But also, we should never lose. Like, I'm kind of saying this if I was Mike Macdonald. We should never lose because our best players didn't get the ball. Like if other things happen, like Geno throws some picks, some special team stuff, we lose a challenge or something, ball doesn't bounce our way, ball hits a guy's helmet, some bad fumble luck, whatever other stuff happens. Someone goes nuclear, you know what I mean, on the other team, like goes for 300 yards receiving, you know, can't tackle Derrick Henry. Like there are parts of the game that the game is the game, stuff happens. But if I was a coach, the most inexcusable thing would be that we didn't, at least on offense, is that we didn't get our best players the ball. You know, that would really grind my gears. And in that game, yeah, the leading receiver was Tyler with 75 yards and 4 catches. Ken had 8 targets, but yeah. So that and Geno threw it 40 times. Jesus Christ. So that is my vote of like that. At what point it was like, yeah, this may not be. We may not be seeing eye to eye.
You know what? I will go further into the season. I don't know if this is accurate. This is just a nice little guess based on a lot of what Mike just alluded to, not getting your playmakers the ball. Obviously, in this scenario, this late in the season, a player wasn't available, so you can scratch him off the list. So I'm looking at the Chicago Bears game. That was the day after Christmas, where they only put up 6 points offensively against a Chicago Bears team that's not good at any facet of football. Maybe defense, but I would expect the Seahawks to score a touchdown in that game, and they did. As you
in every game, literally,
they won 6-3, and they ran the ball actually pretty well. But you know who the leading receiver was, Mike? It was Noah Fant, 4 catches for 43 yards, and it's not like they scored a bunch of touchdowns. That to me is a problem. Okay, like I know DK had 3 catches for 42 yards, but it's like, bruh, not getting your stars involved. That's alarming right then and there. And you don't score a touchdown against the Bears, who are, as I mentioned, they're just not a good football team. That to me was Mike Macdonald saying, "Yeah, this is crazy. We cannot get a touchdown on the Bears." I know they're a professional football team, and I love Mike because Mike Macdonald, that is, because he'll say every team is good. They got great players, and to me, I'm just like, what great players do you see on that defense? Like they got good players on defense, great. Hell, you gave a player away, and Darrell Taylor. So I don't know how great they are, but the fact that the Seahawks did not score a touchdown, I think at that point, Ryan Grubb, just his tombstone was written. Like, I didn't score against the Bears. I drew everything up. It sounded good, and then we don't execute. That is not a good sign for you to be staying as the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks. You put up 6 points. Jason Myers wins you the game. That's it. That's tough to say. That I mean, obviously, it could have been that Giants game because it was just as bad. They didn't win another game after that, if I'm not mistaken. So
the Giants didn't win again after that. No, they did. They beat the Colts. Drew Lock basically played them out of the first pick.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was the big news. I think that was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, yeah, I would say that would probably be the game where where Mike Macdonald had just I had enough. This is it. I can't do it anymore. So I will go the Chicago Bears game.
You're probably closer to being correct than I am because you're right. I picked a pretty early game, but scoring 6 points, that'll do it. I mean, you got to score. You got to score more than 6 points, man. You got everybody cutting their Christmas short to go fly to Chicago. We need to go put up more than 6. Yeah, you know, Mike got a baby at home. Like I left little Jack. Yeah, his son's name is Jack. I left Jack fly out here so we could score 6 points. You know, No, you're probably closer to being right. The Bears do have some decent. Jalen Johnson's a good corner. Montez Sweat's a good player. They have some good players, but their defense was not good this year. I will say that. And to come back. Yeah, you should score more than 6 points every game, no matter who you play. But to come back to my time as a flat circle thing, the reason I brought that up, the comparison there, is because one of the like, there were several kind of inflection points in where Shoddy and Pete disagreed. One of them was early on, after they didn't run the ball much and they lost to the Bears. Shoddy's second game in, he kind of had to sit him down and be like, "Hey, I hired you to run the ball. Run the ball." That was in 2018. I want to come all the way back into his last season. shoddy season, and when they played the Giants. They lost to the Giants. That Colt McCoy led team that didn't have Saquon came in here, and they didn't put up a lot of points, but the Seahawks didn't either, which is more pertinent in the situation. Let me go look that up. Yeah, the Seahawks lost 17-12, and I think they 12. Part of that 12 is on special teams, if I remember correctly. Yeah, they blocked. Ryan Neal blocked a punt. So really, on offense, they only scored 10 points, and that game was one where Shoddy afterwards kind of admitted, "Yeah, we had a plan, and I didn't follow the plan." Basically. And it kind of reminds me the Giants. I see the parallels there because sometimes the coaches are not, Chris, that much different than us. I've learned, like, obviously, like you just said, Mike Macdonald will compliment everybody. They got good coaches. We got a lot of respect for that team. Team could be 1-14. Mike will be like, man, their record, man, it's misleading. They got good players over there. We sitting in there in the auditorium like, Mike, no, they don't. But we understand you have to go up there and lie. But deep down, they know how they should produce against certain teams. They just know. They know they should have put up more than 6 points. Just like they know Ken's got to touch the ball, and they know when it Grubb. The answer, actually, Chris, is probably when Grubb had to apologize to DK the next day for not getting him the ball after the Packers game. That's probably the real answer there, actually, when I think about it. Because it go like, how do you not get DK? Every plan should involve him, getting the ball. So I love that question, though. Thank you for that question. That was a good way to frame that. Do we have any more Grubb questions? Because I want to discuss them a little bit more.
Oh, absolutely, Mike.
Let's go.
Grubb. So
let's do it.
This next one, let's see here. So we all know that he's been fired. This is from Carlo Coleman. Who is more likely to be the OC now? You have Doug Peterson, that was been fired from the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching position. He's no longer there. Brian Daboll, he's actually back with the Giants. Steichen, is that how you say his last name?
Yeah,
Mike?
Shane Steichen, the head coach of the Colts. He's staying too.
Okay, so right now it looks like Peterson, Schottenheimer, Leftwich, Eric Bieniemy, or if Brian Johnson somehow finds his way in Seattle. Any of those names, is that a possibility? Or Mike, do you have someone else that could be out there as well?
Yeah, so I wrote a story about this that's up now on The Athletic, kind of looking at some candidates. It's just some names. It's not like I haven't done too much of a deep dive or a ton of reporting because he literally just got fired while I was asleep on the plane back from LA. But I think more important than the name per se is the route that he takes. So for me, Chris, I think there's like loosely 3.5 routes to take here if you're Mike Macdonald. Option one is just an in-house promotion. It's very simple, not that complicated. You promote Scott Huff, you promote Jake Peets, their passing game coordinator, you promote whoever you want on your staff, your QB coach, doesn't matter. Just in-house promotion. If you want to do that, because if you just think the answer was you and Grubb weren't seeing eye to eye and everyone else was, just promote from within, maintain some continuity. Boom. That's path one. I think I'm not putting these in order of what I would do. We're just numbering them. So that's path one. Path two is to find like your Mike Macdonald equivalent in terms of like an up-and-comer on the rise. And there are a few. This one I did do a little digging on. I was talking to some of my colleagues at The Athletic, kind of just reaching out to some people, seeing who, covers like someone who's like a rising stud, quote unquote, whether it's a QB coach or a run game coordinator or whatever. And some of those names I did throw in there as well. Here, let me pull this up and pull up some of the people that they mentioned. And I put some of those in the story too. Some people mentioned Josh McCown. He is the Vikings QB coach. Nick Caley, he is the passing game coordinator of the Rams. I hope I'm saying his name right. Caley, whatever. A few guys on the Niners, Clay Kubiak, Brian Greasy. Let's see. Ravens QB coach, T. Martin. I threw him in there. That one's interesting because he's on the rise, like some of these other dudes are. And then also he knows Mike. We'll get some continuity on the staff because he worked in Baltimore. QB coach Davis Webb. I think he's in Denver. I threw the Packers pass game coordinator in there as well. Brian Johnson is a name that came up. He was the OC with the Eagles last year. That was a mess, though. And wasn't a mess because he didn't know ball. It was just like a mess behind the scenes, which is why he wasn't there. Mike Kafka, who's the OC for the Giants. So like, I think excluding Mike and Brian Johnson, I would say those other names I mentioned are guys who would be on the rise, but they're unproven though. That's why they're in their own path. Like a lot of these guys I mentioned haven't called plays, haven't been OCs before at the NFL level, so you'd be taking a gamble on them, like the Seahawks took a gamble on Mike Macdonald. I think that's path number 2. Path 3 is some of these OCs who are not calling plays. Like Mike Kafka is the OC of the Giants. Doesn't call plays. He has called plays before, but doesn't currently. Who else is an OC? Brian Schottenheimer would fall on that, but I'm not throwing him in there. Frank Smith, I think, is the OC of the Dolphins. He doesn't call plays, but he's the OC, So guys like that, guys who are involved in good offenses but aren't the play caller. I think Doug Peterson used to be that in Kansas City. I think he wasn't like the full-time play caller with Andy Reid. Like they split it a little bit. And then he went on to go coach the Eagles and all that stuff. So you could find a guy like that who's like an OC by title, but not a play caller. So he's not as inexperienced as someone like an up-and-comer.
I was going to say, maybe they try the Rams route, Mike LaFleur.
Yeah, see something like that. Oh, I think Mike might have called plays before, if I can't remember. But yeah, he's like an OC who's not really the OC because McVay calls the plays. And then the final route is just someone who's done it before. An experienced person like a Doug Peterson who just got fired by the Jacksonville Jaguars, who was calling plays there for a little bit, I believe. It was a weird situation. I know he was calling plays in Philly when they won the Super Bowl. So there you go. That's enough for me. That's why Shane Steichen came up. He was on that Eagles staff previously with Nick Sirianni. He's a head coach of the Colts now. We don't have to go through all the names. Like people, Daboll got thrown in there too, but just someone who's done it before. Byron Leftwich was Tom Brady's OC, so he's done it before. I think he wants to be a head coach. Mike McCarthy is the head coach of the Cowboys. Call plays now. So it's like the fourth path. And so for me, I don't know who it's going to be. I have no insight on that as of today. I'd have to make some phone calls. But if you're asking, like, what would I do if Mike called us and it's like, what would your Seahawks man-to-man endorsement be? I would prefer that fourth route, just someone who's done it before, even someone who they don't have to have been a head coach before, but if they have, that's great, like a Doug Peterson, Mike McCarthy, if Jerry Jones doesn't keep him. And the reason is I'm just placing so much value on the experience there. We've talked about this before, Chris. I just see the value in it. When you have Mike, who's so young, Mike's only a few years older than us. Really, like we hang out with people who are Mike Macdonald age. Like that's you put it that way, it's kind of crazy. So like he's young, he's figuring this out, he's learning. But this isn't like the learn time for the franchise. This is the win time for the franchise. Like Dave Canales can go grind it out. Like he can win 5 wins this year, maybe get to 9 wins next year and build it up. Same way Dan Campbell did in Detroit. Like they sucked and then they were okay, then they were good. There's a trajectory there. With Mike, I think the trajectory is start winning right away. And that's a little unfair to Mike, but that's the reality of it. And so I don't think we've said that in the offseason, he didn't need an inexperienced OC. I think you should get an experienced OC that you can say, hey, Doug, I'm going to fix our special teams because that wasn't good. I'm going to make sure our defense stays rock solid. I need you to be the head coach of the offense. We're going to talk, but I just need you to handle that. Can you do that? And then, yes, like obviously you're going to do that with whoever you hire, but I just think it's much easier, obviously, to do that with someone who's done it. You don't have to micromanage or oversee Byron Leftwich. You don't have to micromanage or oversee who else did I? Mike McCarthy, Doug Peterson, anybody who's done it before. I don't have to name everybody, And Chris, I want to play this audio from Grubb. It is from Thursday. So the last time we talked to him before the Rams game, this was him getting asked. He got asked, what has he learned about himself or how has he changed from week 1 to now? And so here's Grubb's answer to that question. I'll tell you why I found it interesting.
I don't think I've changed. I think there's things that naturally everybody goes through their first year and any type of like change in venue as far as like leagues and things like that. I would say the biggest thing is just understanding some of the things that you got to do to tailor your system to your guys, and which we've always been able to do really well. And so I think continue to grow that process and, be able to attack different defenses and, defensive families the right way. And I think that's been probably as big of a process as anything, is just understanding that part of it is that, there's different families defensively that show up in the NFL and schematically where their things come from and how to attack those things. I think, Mike does a great job of talking those things through, attacking scheme and structure, not just people, and certainly if there's people that we can attack, we want to go after them too, but understanding, why are we doing things? And I think offensively, those are some things that we've had some really, really high moments this season and obviously some low moments with that too. So I think that's what we've learned is, how to try to attack those things better on a week-to-week basis.
Okay. Chris, I don't think we've talked about this. Me and you have since that clip. Not much. No. Two things. One, really appreciated Grubb's honesty, his candor, openness to kind of give us insight into something he's grown in. That's one. Appreciate that. Two, that was alarming. Like that was it was really, really alarming because that's something that it should be so obvious, or that would be more obvious to someone who's just done it before. And that's I don't even fault Grubb for that. But when I heard that in real time, I was like, oh, that might have been the time I was like, he's gonna get fired. Because it's not even his fault. But that was obvious watching the team on the tape and everything and listening to the guys. But it's also something that, I would just expect guys to know if you've done it before. Because I mean, we watch college ball, we went to Wazoo, we watch Pac-12. Like, it's very easy in the Pac-12 to just be like, yo, their left defensive end is buns. So you know where all our runs are gonna go today? Over to that dude, that redshirt freshman, that whoever, that transfer that's not that good, or their field safety is flat-footed. So we're bombing Roma Dunze over there today. That's how we're going to get down. It's much easier to match up Hunt in college because there's talent deficiencies across rosters. Playing Alabama in the CFP is different than playing Fresno State. There is no Fresno State in the NFL. I could have told Grubb that. You could have told Grubb that. And maybe he knew that going in and just didn't adjust to it well, like he was talking about. But Chris, when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, he's gone, and Mike's probably going to hire someone experienced because that's like the most obvious thing, the difference between the two, damn the hash marks for a second. They're like that right there that you need to learn the coordinators you're playing and the families they come from, not just try to throw at Riley Moss. I feel like that should have been the most simple thing. And when he talked about that as like something that he was struggling with and had to learn a little bit more about, I was like, yeah, he might be a goner.
Yeah, that's, as you mentioned, your first year in the NFL, it's a lot to ask. You're thrusted into it. Now, maybe if you start off as a passing game coordinator, which that's probably a good start. You learn the in and outs of the NFL, you work your way up. Maybe 2 years from now, you are an OC and you make it through your first year. But because he just went from college OC, which is, as you mentioned, there's a Fresno State. All their corners are bad. Okay, bombs away. Come to the NFL, you won't have a team that has just a bunch of bad corners. You might have 3 bad ones and a really good one. You look at the Patriots, right? They have a really good corner and a bunch of other guys. But that really good corner, you can't just attack him, but every now and then you can take a shot. So I think that's a good point, Mike, that you brought up there. This next one is from the Big Ginge. How do you guys feel now that the Hawks have officially fired Grubb? Should he have been given a second year to really set it up?
It's a good question. I think I don't think so, just because of what we kind of discussed. Because there is an argument, and I want to read a little bit of what Geno said. The quote itself is too long for audio. I don't want to do that, but I want to read a little bit of what Geno said yesterday. This would be yesterday. This was after the game. I was asking him like, "Hey man, what'd you think of your first year with Grubb?" This is from Geno. I think Grubb is an excellent coordinator and an even better man. Our first year, obviously, there were some ups and downs. There were some things we can improve on, and we'll work hard to get those things fixed. I believe in this system. I believe this is a really good system, and it's going to be really good for a long time. Grubb has exactly what it takes to be a great coordinator in this league. It's his first year, man. Got to give the guy some grace. He's figuring things out, too. He did an outstanding job leading the group. I love the passion he brings to the game. He made me a better quarterback. And he went on to go say some more, but so Grubb had the Geno endorsement. And I think the figuring stuff out, giving him a chance, giving him grace, I think all of that is legitimate. And you know what stood out to me too, Chris, we talk about attacking the schemes and structures and stuff. I thought Grubb was a lot better in all of his rematches this season. Like when he was much better in round 2 against the Cardinals, like worlds better, dropped a 30 ball. They moved the ball a lot better against the Niners, particularly when Nick Bosa went down. But in the rematch, thought they moved it better. Thought their schemes were better, and then they were much better, albeit like against halfway of the Rams starters. They were just better against the Rams in that second round. So and I think that speaks to Grubb's learning. And I bet you what was happening in those situations was he was like, all right, instead of just trying to make sure we can get Jackson isolated on this safety for half the damn game or whatever, let's look at where this coach comes from and how their rules give them answers to what we're going to do to them. Because that was the thing that really killed the Legion of Boom. Not killed it, but, like, it just made it more difficult for the Seahawks to have that schematic advantage when guys started getting hired away. When you lose a Gus Bradley, when you lose a Dan Quinn, whoever else left, Ken Norton, when these guys leave, what they were doing was explaining the rules to their offensive coaches. So imagine how good Kyle Shanahan already is when he gets to Atlanta. And then Dan Quinn tells him all the Legion of Boom rules. So now he's like, oh, now I'm just armed with, it's like Popeye with the spinach, right? So, and it's because the rules tell you where you're going to, if you learn a team's rules and their schemes and the foundation of it, you learn how they're going to come up with answers. And that's why you see people who hire someone who used to work for someone else and it doesn't work. Like you hire someone from the Fangio tree or the Pete Carroll tree or whatever. And sometimes it doesn't work all the way. It's because, well, you don't really know the full secret sauce, like Pete does. So you can work it halfway, but not all the way. And I bring up all these rules and stuff because that really is the best way to go about it. Like every so often you are going to have some matchups. Like if y'all just watch the who just played on Saturday, Chris? Who was that? It was the Bengals. The Bengals played the Broncos, and they just kept throwing at Riley Moss, the white guy. They was like, T. Higgins is bigger than you. He's better than you. One-on-one, go crazy. I think T. Higgins had like 3 touchdowns and win a game. You can do that every once in a while. But generally in the NFL, you have to be able to like understand what are these teams' rules, where are their fronts vulnerable, where can we exploit their aggressiveness, yada, yada, yada. And that's going to get you by more on a week-to-week basis from what I've learned from talking to players and coaches over the years. Would Grubb have figured that out? Yes, I do think so. And you could see it in real time this year a little bit, particularly in his rematches. But I just don't think they have the time for all that. I think they're trying to win right away. So I think Grubb's probably going to be, if he gets another gig, he'll probably be fine. I don't think this was ever the job for him because of the expectations. They're trying to win. It's someone that we can talk about the expectation a little bit later, but they're trying to win, Chris. And a guy who's never done it before, being hired by a guy who's also never done it before, and a bunch of other guys who never done it before, like that just was not as successful to win. That was not a good recipe. And so, no, I agreed with them making this move. There was some schematic stuff too, but I agreed with it. Like, I don't think this was the right time to put Grubb in charge of a team when you're trying to win big right away.
Yeah, and just one more thing to add. You never saw improvement. You just saw flashes, right? The defense, you saw the improvement. They went from, oh, they're not that good right now. This is not good. Mike Macdonald, you're supposed to be this curator of defense. What's going on? Okay, let me make a few moves here. Get some linebackers. Oh, a linebacker, excuse me. Bring him in. Okay, things look better. Run defense. Oh, my goodness. Wow, okay. Final product, not so great against the Rams, but, well, it is what it is. They got their 10th win. Woohoo! The offense, again, it just flatlined. It was not really that good, and it just stayed really not that good. You didn't get to the end of the season and say, you know what? I feel confident that they should bring Ryan Grubb back because A, B, and C. If anything, it's like, yeah, I don't know. And you mentioned they want to win. They didn't win, Mike. They're not in the playoffs, so it was pretty simple. Now that you put it out there like that, it's pretty straightforward. I can understand why they didn't bring him back. It's unfortunate, but that's just the reality of this type of business. They wanted to win. The expectation, as you wrote in your story about 2-3 weeks ago, the expectation was to win. The playoffs, get into the playoffs. They didn't even do that. And the offense had a big...
You say it like that. No, you're right, though. You're right, yeah.
The offense played a huge role in that reason of not making the playoffs. Bad offensive line, yet again. Not using your weapons like you need to. DK. You got to, I don't know what else we can say, but minimum 7 to 8 targets a game. At minimum, that should be the standard. 7 good targets, not DK run on the sideline, you chuck it 30 yards out of bounds because, you're under pressure. I'm talking 7 like DK post pattern. We're looking at him. DK deep out route. We're looking at him. DK deep post or deep in route over the middle, 17-yard dig routes. DK 7-yard curl route. Hell, they threw a smoke screen to DK. That should be automatic. When you see a cornerback 10 yards off, it should be a hot read. You just laser the ball to DK, let him get 5-7 yards. Hell, he might break it. Those are things that you should just automatic. The other 4 or 5 you can create through the offense, but you just look over at the DK and you see a corner 10 yards off. Yeah, just throw it quickly to him. So after assessing things now that I've realized, I kind of agree why they didn't bring him back. It's not it didn't work this year. We'll give it a shot again. They're trying to win. They break the huddle, Mike. You said they mentioned Super Bowl. Is that what they did when they were playing the Tennessee Titans and they were doing their scrimmage and they broke the huddle and it was like 1, 2, 3 Super Bowl, something of that magnitude? Like we have aspirations of going all the way. Was it that this past season, Mike?
I can't remember now. I know Tyler did that after one of those years, maybe the first year after they traded Russ. But the larger point is, yes, they did want to. Every team wants to win the Super Bowl, duh. But they definitely had aspirations of like at minimum making the playoffs. Like everyone is just like, yo, at the very least we should get in the dance. Like that to not get in the dance is just like below all of their expectations. Everyone. I don't even know how fans could have different expectations. Like you gotta make the playoffs. So yeah, they wanted to. They didn't win. And you're right. The offense was a big part of why they're not in the playoffs. A huge part. They're just laying eggs. Laying eggs. Once you've seen the linebackers weren't even falling for their play action from under center, I was like, yeah, this is cooked. I kind of peeped that in like the second Cardinals game. I think it was. I was like, they're not even biting, bro. They just blitzing Buddha and living with the results. I was like, yo, this is not. They're on to you. And then when you know what, Chris? The more I go back to that first question, it really might have been the Green Bay game because when Matt LaFleur came out and ran the tunnel screen on his first play. And then stopped the tunnel screen twice when the Seahawks tried to run it. And the Seahawks tried to run it that game out of a different look than they had ever ran it. They ran it with Jackson from the backfield. They were so prepared, the Packers were, for that tunnel screen, that they knew, even though you haven't shown us this look with Jackson out of the backfield, we've scouted you so well, we know that's going to be your wrinkle, quote unquote, to it. We know that so well, we're going to run it on you to start the game. That is probably there when it was like, yeah, man, they're on to you, buddy. They're on to you. They blew up the tunnel screen in the Rams game. Forget who they tried to run it to. I think Jackson blew it up then too. So yeah, it just wasn't. It wasn't. So I agree. I agree with under these circumstances. Like if another team that's on the rise, like for example, if the Raiders wanted to hire Ryan Grubb, I'd be like, cool, that's fine. You're gonna get a young quarterback. You're kind of rebuilding the offense. Go ahead. Experiment. Lower expectation. Yeah, go ahead. That's cool. But like. Other team like Seattle, no. There's no margin for error here, as we've seen when they don't make the playoffs because of the 5th freaking tiebreaker. You got to increase that margin for error by scoring some more points.
This next one is from Govind. A lot of talk of Grubb and Harbaugh due to struggles. How about other parts of the staff? I know it's hard to evaluate Durday and Macdonald calling plays, but any thoughts on him and other positional coaches, Mike?
Yeah, good question. The first one that comes to mind is the running backs coach. But now that I've seen Kenny McIntosh and Zach Charbonnet, I really think my critiques there were really just a Ken Walker critique, really. Because Ken's vision just wasn't great this year to me. It just wasn't. And we talked about that in some of our episodes too. Like you can just see where it's like, Ken, bro, if you just run straight, there's yards. Trust it. And at first I thought that was maybe okay, but what are the coaches doing? And then Kenny McIntosh was getting in there and running straight. And I was like, oh, okay, never mind. He is teaching it. Number 9 just might not be listening, which is whatever. Coaches can only control that but so much. Because Kenny McIntosh was hitting them holes. Boy. He good contact balance. Like he looked really good. And then Zach looked good later in the season too. So he would have been the first one, but I came up off that. I thought Durday, the question refers to Aiden Durday, who's the D-line, not the D-line coach. He was the D-line coach with the Cowboys. He's now the DC. He doesn't call the plays, but he has that D-line background. And so when I look at him, that's one of the areas I wanted to see be really strong. And I thought it was. That the D-line was their best and most consistent position group the entire year. what really put that in focus was when they played the Lions, and obviously they were really shorthanded and gave up like 40 points or something in that game. But the D line actually played really well shorthanded. Like I'm pretty sure Miles Adams, who's now on the Lions, got signed to the Lions because they looked back at that tape and was like, "Yo, he actually played all right against us." Because he was good. Their whole D line is generally pretty disciplined. They have some problems on the edge there with some rush discipline a little bit, but that might just be a personnel problem. Schematically, I thought they rushed the passer really like consistently. The D line was pretty consistent in the run game, and Mike Macdonald was telling us that all year. He was like, "Yeah, our second level sucks, so I'm going to put new players in there," and he did, and it worked. LBs would be kind of linebackers would be position coach. I'd be like, "Oh, so what was you doing? What's going on here?" That'd be one, but not Dirty. Feel pretty good about him. I feel pretty good about Carl Scott too, because I do think that it was very clear what was going on with some of the corners who didn't play as we expected was just so very clearly mental. Like it just so very clearly was like Reek having the games where he wasn't there. It was like, okay, is that a Carl Scott thing, who's their DB coach, or is that like just Reek today? That's why Reek was able to bounce back so fast to the Packers game. Trey Brown, we've seen Trey play better than that. He's had the same DB coach, so I'm not really worried about like Carl Scott. I was a little worried about like the O-line coaching a little bit, but so here's where I wasn't really sure what to do about the O-line, Chris, and we talked about this too, because there was some times where it just didn't look like guys knew who they were supposed to be blocking. Like if you just lose a block, it's what everybody loses a block. It's the NFL. You get called for holdings, whatever. But just the whole operation, whoever's in charge, like maybe that was just a Grubb thing, and maybe that's why he's gone. The operation is where I was most concerned when you look at like some of the other coaches, and like they were really sloppy on offense. They didn't know always who they were supposed to block on offense. They got a lot of procedural penalties, even after Connor Williams retired. So it wasn't just a Connor Williams thing. So there wasn't any super alarming individual position coaches where I'm like, you should probably get him out of here too. But just when I really sat back and thought about when I saw this question, I was like, it really just comes down to the offensive operation. And that may just circle back to Grubb. I'm not sure. But that part was probably the most where I'm like, there's no reason to have as many illegal shift penalties as you guys have. Or why are you false starting so much? Like it just doesn't, those things just shouldn't happen. And they were doing that as much as any team in the league. So I don't know who that falls on, but when I look at like non-coordinators, so to speak, that's the main thing that was concerning. Every other position group I felt like had its act together in ways that I could measure through the coach. Because sometimes guys just don't play well. Like Nehemiah Pritchett just fell down on a double move against the Rams, gave a 50-yard bomb. I know good and goddamn well Carl Scott don't teach them to jump that route in a situation like that. No, they don't. So like I'm not putting that on him. The same thing with, remember, Reek couldn't get his head around in the Packers game. Like I know Carl teaches that. So I've seen him do it. So I'm like, you've seen it too. You come out to camp. In fact, just getting the head around. So it's like, I don't know what else he's supposed to do. Bench him, which they kind of did to start the game. So yeah, long story short, I'm not too worried about any individual position coach. I really think the head of the snake, Grubb, was probably the big one because of all the procedural stuff that their offense was not good at.
This next one comes from Holly. Yes, the Seahawks didn't make the postseason, but would you still consider their first year under Mike Macdonald a success?
Okay, you got to go first in this one because I feel like I'm gonna be the Debbie Downer, so I feel like you should start with some more more positive than me. I think. Like, just go. I'm talking too much.
The season was not a success. That is the reason why they fired Ryan Grubb. If the season was a success, Ryan Grubb would still be an offensive coordinator. They'd be in the playoffs, getting ready to prepare for a game Saturday or Sunday. It was a success for Mike Macdonald because, as a lot of Seahawks fans notice, that defense has come alive. You see the strengths. There's a reason why Ernest Jones is a big talk of the town. There's a reason why Leonard Williams feels that he was snubbed off the All-Pro team. There is a reason why everyone's favorite, Spoon, made the Pro Bowl team and could potentially might get a nod for All-Pro. We'll see how that shakes out. There's a lot of good corners, but he's definitely in that conversation. So you can see, there was some positivity, but when they look at success, again, to go back to Mike's story that he wrote a few weeks ago, the goal was to get to the playoffs and win. They didn't do that. So that in itself, unfortunately, is not as successful. Is it a stepping stone to something bigger and better, which I think Mike Macdonald touched on, Geno Smith also touched on the post game presser on Sunday after their win against the Rams? They see the vision, but they didn't want to be in this position. They would rather be saying that after maybe a tough loss in the second round or maybe even the wild card round, they lose to a better team. They didn't get that opportunity. So I would say no, the season wasn't a success.
Okay, that was I was right. That was way more positive than my direction. I think it was a huge failure. Like I personally think it was a huge failure. And it's not even just about the results. Like let's start with the results though, because I do think we got to put those in context. Just to say the Seahawks just got 10 wins, that just seems super like fraudulent. Yeah, I think this season was a huge failure. And it's not just because of the results and the win total and whatever, right? So I know that sounds like, Mike, what do you mean you won 10 games? Okay, first off, that 10 game is like, come on, guys. Did you watch the game? If you didn't, that's cool. But I'm not about to count a Jimmy G led Rams team that was playing. I think they played one starter who like had played meaningful snaps all season on offense. You know, their backup running back broke his arm in the game. Like, come on, dog. You're not about to tell me that this, like, okay, you got the 10th win. I left that game very convinced that if that game had mattered to the Rams, they would win by 15. Like I did not feel good about the defense. Damn near lost anyway, you know, and that was with the backup. So I just don't like just like you can't take the win away per se, but we do have to put it in context. Excuse me. So there is that. But the reason I really call it a big failure is because they didn't do anything to achieve the desired result. And I think that is massive. That's a massive failure in process. You know, like if you told me, like we kind of sounded like Debbie Downers this offseason, but it really felt like Mike was set up to fail. You surrounded him. You hired a young cat like him with no experience as a head coach and no Rolodex of people to call to help him out other than Leslie Frazier. And you say, all right, we want to win. Cool. Let's fix our roster. Okay, well, we don't have any money. We spent it all on Leonard Williams. Damn, no money? I mean, I can get you Laken Tomlinson, and Tyrell Dotson, and I can maybe squeeze in like Rayshon Jenkins and, you know, maybe Jerome Baker. It's like, well, okay, cool. Well, we got draft picks, right? Well, okay, yeah, but we don't have a second round pick also because of Leonard. It's like, all right, cool. Well, all right, well, let's use the picks we got. Maybe we can get some impact players, you know? So you were banking so much on bargain shopping, particularly up front. Your draft picks to hit immediately, which you just can't really count on. Like they had the 16th pick or something, 16th or 17th, whatever Byron Murphy was. And their next pick wasn't Christian Haynes until way later. So you really only had like 2 top 100 picks. After that, if you get contributions from the rest of your draft class, you're really playing with house money. Like what AJ Barner did, is house money. Tyrese Knight, that's house money. You're not really expecting guys picked where they were picked to ball. You need your Christian Haynes and your Byron Murphys to ball. Christian Haynes, no. Byron Murphy, yes. And I'm bringing all this up because I think if you were going to ask Mike to really succeed, you had to give him a succeedable situation. I just don't think they did. They gave him a situation very comparable to what the previous regime didn't succeed with and just counted on all this coaching to just outcoach the previous regime. And I thought that was arrogant. And it was very foreseeable. If you were just going to do all the same stuff, but just replace the coaches and expect a different result, that was dumb. So to do all that stuff and get the result that's largely the same, they're another version of the same team, which we've discussed before. That's what makes it a failure to me. And you can't do that. You can't do the process that they did. It's like, yeah, first year OC, never been in the NFL, first time head coach. We're not going to spend any money this offseason. We're going to cash out on Noah Fant and Leonard Williams and then bargain shop the rest of the way. We don't have a lot of premium draft picks. We just need you guys to take a very similar roster and coach it up. Get us further. That was basically what they asked. That's not fair. And that wasn't going to work. It just changed who it didn't work against. Like the Niners fell off, but then the Rams were good. You know, it just switched. That's all. We all thought they could maybe finish second because the Niners would be the first place team. The Rams are the first place team. That's it. That's all that really changed. Now, why they had some of the issues, get into, red zone stuff, procedural stuff, Geno picks, the OC, blah, blah. But like Grubb not being the stud in year one, I could have told you that last February. Could have saved everybody some trouble. OC in the NFL is a hard job. It's a hard job. And if you want to be good at it from the jump, you usually need some type of experience in the NFL. It's not a prerequisite, but it matters. So I feel like they did all of the things to trick themselves into thinking they would get further. And I think that is where that's what makes this a big failure, because it was preventable. It really was. If they'd have called us, Chris, if John Schneider and Jody would have called us like every step of the way, we'd have told them to not do like half the stuff. We saw it coming. Like, hey, man, you guys, no, you're just gonna run the same old line back, huh? All you're gonna do is sign Tremaine Ingram and Nick Harris, huh? That's it. Okay. So Olu, Nick Harris, Tremaine Ingram. Okay, Laken Tomlinson too. Huh? That's what you're gonna do, huh? All right, cool. How's Abe, by the way? Oh, you don't know? Oh, okay. What you gonna do? George Fant. All right, that's a good plan. All right, but what if that don't work? Like I'd like the George plan, but you guys get what I'm getting at here. I just feel like there were so many obvious missteps that the degree of difficulty on what you were asking Mike Macdonald to do was very high, and he was not given the resources. Like they needed to go spend. Really, honestly, they need to go spend. And not bargain shop like they usually do. Like give him a significantly better roster. Like Mike went into training camp needing starters at key spots. They didn't have a starting center. Chris, come on. You should not have needed Connor Williams in August. If someone had got hurt, then you need to sign Connor. That's different. You shouldn't have just needed him. They shouldn't have needed Ernest Jones. You signed 2 linebackers and drafted one before Ernest ever showed up. Somebody should have been good enough to play the Mike by the bye week. So just don't feel like he was set up the right way. They tried to clean the books, didn't really clean them. Get rid of Quandre, Jamal, Bobby, JB. It's like didn't clean the books. Just didn't do enough. I don't think. So yeah, that's why I think it's a failure. It's not just because they didn't get to wherever. I didn't expect them to win the Super Bowl, but I knew that we'd be right back here talking about how they're just kind of an average team, need to fix the O-line, all the same stuff from last year, So that's why. A long-winded way of saying I think it's just a failure because they didn't prepare for it to be anything more than what it was the previous years. So getting back to the same result, I blame the people who, charted out this plan.
This is from Eric Wall. How would you assess the first Pete Carroll-less season from draft day and free agency through Sunday's game against the Rams?
Oh, damn. Yeah, I kind of just went through a little bit of that. But yeah, I really think that another way of putting it, Chris, I feel like they just misdiagnosed what the problems were, or just undersold them. I just didn't look at the Seahawks from the last, let's go with post Legion of Boom. So the last time, anytime multiple Legion of Boom players played in a game together was 2017. So let's start after 2017. Every season after that, 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Then you fire Pete. How many seasons is that? I'm asking you to do math, but I'm sorry.
Is it 3?
2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. All right, 6 seasons. 6 seasons.
I heard 3 of that. Look at me.
I know, it's okay. So that's 6 seasons. In that 6-game sample, or a 6-season sample, they have won 1 playoff game. And that was against the Eagles. I think like Josh McCown played in that game or something. And they've won a division once. They won it in 2020. In that span, I've never thought that it was just, if you just solely replace the coaches, you'll be fine. That was really I honestly think that was the most arrogant possible result or conclusion you could come to from last year, or like the last 5-6 seasons, the span we're looking at, was to say, you know what the issue is? Pete and his guys. John and them is good. No, I always thought you should either clean house entirely, fire John and all his people and Pete and all his people and bring in a whole new regime, or you keep them both. I wouldn't have thought either, for what it's worth. I wouldn't have thought, you know what's the problem? Why they ain't done nothing since why they haven't got back to an NFC title game since 2014? It's really John and his guys. We just fire them and keep Pete and his people, we'll be straight. I didn't think that was the answer either, to be very fair. I just thought they did what was the absolutely wrong thing, was to go just the halfway clean house. You know, it's like you clean the living room and the kitchen and the bathroom dirty as hell still. It's like, no, your house is not right. Your bed's still messy. Bathtub still got mold. Like you didn't renovate the house. You changed a few things. You needed to renovate the entire house or just stay in your funky ass house. That was it. One of the two. They did neither. So that's kind of my assessment of it. It's not like it's not fixable, Chris, but it feels like they had to do more than what they did. They halfway cleaned the thing.
This next one is from Nate Ramirez. Do you feel more optimistic about the Seahawks moving forward than you did this time last season?
Man, okay, you gotta take this because I feel like I'm gonna just be negative this whole show, man.
Man, I would say no. I feel they're probably back to where they were last year because not only last season they were looking for an OC, they're looking for an OC again this season. So the problem didn't really solve itself. The defense, I think, has been that they figured that out. But what about special teams? Are Seahawks fans? Is Mike Macdonald and company? Are they feeling confident in special teams? I mean, they cut 2 dudes because of 1 week's performance. It wasn't the special teams coach's fault, but I don't know if the coverage has been all that great. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't watch a lick of special teams film. Like if there's film to watch, I missed all of it.
The coverage has been okay. It really the return game has been just bad. That was where
the blocking scheme, that's not that screams.
Yeah, the return game is worse than the coverage for sure.
There you go. So that might be an issue. So your question was, how are you feeling about this year going into this year compared to last year? It's about the same. I don't feel like this roster is better right now, but they haven't done anything. The season just ended. I feel they're in the same rut. They're just stuck in purgatory.
Yeah, I feel like they can get out of it a little bit. The division feels a little bit more winnable than I felt it was this time last year. I will say that. There's my positive. Like last year, I would have thought you're cooked. The Niners are just going to keep winning this thing. And boy, they got hit not just with injuries. Like they had some, Chris, really think about it, the Niners went through some stuff. Like their first round pick got shot. You know, their stud corner, his daughter died in the middle of the season. You know, I was just watching a video earlier today of Travarius Ward talking about the PTSD he still has from living in California because that's where it happened. He wakes up in the middle of the night throwing up and stuff like that. Like that happened. He was still showing up. He was out for a little bit, but he was still showing up to work, you know? So they were dealing with stuff like that on top of losing Bosa and Trent Williams and Purdy getting hurt and Brandon Ayuk's knee going to hell. Like, so they fell off in a way that I could not ever imagine. So I don't know if they'll bounce back, at least to be the team that they were, because they're going to have to make some tough decisions here. So I think the division looks a little bit more winnable, because I don't know how much longer Matt Stafford's going to play at this high level that he's playing at. So that's my positive. But the other thing, I just really feel like that this is another misdiagnosis is on the way. You know, we're not going to hear from John Snyder this week. We won't hear from him again until the combine, other than him doing his radio show. And until I hear otherwise from him or Jody Allen, one of the two, I'm just going to feel like it's just going to be more of a misdiagnosis. You really got to know what your team is. And we have talked about this in the context of other teams before when we had Dan Duggan on, who covers the Giants. You know, that 2022 season was very big for 3 teams, I felt like, in the NFC that made the playoffs. The Giants made the playoffs that year with Brian Daboll. The Vikings made the playoffs, I think won 13 games. And then the Seahawks won the playoffs. Like, all 3 of those teams were like, damn, we made the playoffs. None of them were really expected to. The Vikings were definitely not expected to win 13 games or whatever. And how those teams viewed that season was very important. The Vikings, let's start with the Giants. The Giants kind of tricked themselves into thinking, oh, we're good. We fixed Daniel Jones. No, you did not. Paid him a bunch of money. You went into win now mode when you should have did more of a tear down, step back thing. The Vikings saw that. Maybe it helps that the Vikings lost a playoff game at home that year, I think, to the Giants. Maybe that's what was their wake-up call. I don't know. Did they? Yeah. They gave up a 30 ball as the 3 seed. And so maybe that was their wake-up call. They recognized we can't go in on Kirk Cousins. We got to let him play out this deal. We got to move on, draft a guy. Like they knew, they self-assessed and were like, we're not as good as this 13-game record would suggest. The Seahawks, they won 9 games that year. We made the playoffs. First year without Russ, they were like, ooh, we're on the rise. We nailed with this draft class. That's Reek's class, Kobe, Abe, Boye, Cross. Like, I can kind of see Ken Walker. I can see how they were like, okay, we're on the rise. Let's go. I get that. But I think in hindsight, at least in the case of the Giants and the Seahawks, or at least in the case of the Seahawks, I can see why the Giants, or yeah, never mind. I think all three teams probably should have took a step back. Probably, they probably would have been better off really deciding like there's a reason we didn't get further in the playoffs, and we should look at that more than we should look at just the fact that we won 9 games and made the playoffs. Like the Giants clearly didn't make it further. I think they got curb stomped by the Eagles that year because they weren't very good. The Vikings, they lost to the Giants because they weren't very good. It's like, okay, why aren't you that good? Why did you win 13 games but you're not that good? If you're the Giants, why did you win however many games you won but you're not that good? And you're the Seahawks, okay, you won 9 games, but why did you end up getting smoked by the Niners? So I think for the Seahawks, to bring it back to them, I think the real self-assessment needed to be, okay, we need to spend big up front. Like we need to guarantee that the trenches are the strength of our team. That's what it needed to be. That's what the Seahawks conclusion should have been. It was more so like, let's just change the names around, make a couple tweaks. And that just clearly wasn't enough. And it's been the problem. And it kind of still is the problem, at least on the offense. So until that changes, I say all that to say, until that changes, that attitude of being like, we're not going to stop. We cannot come out of this offseason unless the trenches are our strongest group through hell or high water. Then we're not going to get where we want to be. You can't just every year say, if we fix the O-line, we'll be straight. Chris, we could say that after every offseason for the last 10 years. We really could. You fix the O-line, find the interior O-lineman. Haven't had a center since Unger. Until I hear John say otherwise, I can't feel better. I just feel like, yeah, I'm with you. They'll just be here coasting as a kind of goodish team until eventually Jody gets tired of it and tells everybody to get out.
This is from your friend. Would the Seahawks have been better off now if they decide to strip the whole thing down one full offseason and go into a full rebuild? And if the answer to that is yes, what year in hindsight would have been the best to do it in?
Yeah, I think it's from my homie Adam Nathan. Shout out to my homie Adam in London. Yeah, this is a good one, Chris. What do you think? I've been kind of thinking about this for a little bit.
The thing it's a dangerous one because you can get stuck. I know I mentioned they're in a rut right now at being mediocre. I think if I made a poll and posted on the Instagram story or on our Instagram Seahawks Man to Man page and say, hey, would you guys be okay with 10 years of mediocrity? You're right there at the playoffs. You make it one year, get bounced next year, but you're just right there every year. Or do you want to bottom out and you have a chance to really be a great team, but it's going to be 7 years of bad, 7 years of 4 wins, 6 wins, 8 wins, 7 wins. Which would you prefer? I would guess a lot of fans would probably say, "Screw it, give me the mid. I'll just be mid." Because eventually we're gonna get there. You're gonna make the right decision somewhere in the draft. Maybe you say, you know what, to hell with this. We're gonna go do what the Rams did, pay everybody and try to get a Super Bowl. Maybe you get that greedy, and that works. But I don't know if there is a year that I would have been best to do it, just because it's one of those you don't know until you do it. That's how I look at it. You won't know until you do it. I don't have a great answer for that, other than if you go out and do it, you can see how it's successful, or you can see how it's not successful, and now your team, you look like the Raiders. You're just, yeah, we gave up all the quarterbacks, but Aiden Connell, he's solid. Yeah, okay, how many wins did he get you? We have Max Crosby. He's great, but he's hurt now. So now what? You don't have any receivers. You traded that away. It's just, it could get messy. And I don't know if the Raiders are going to get any better. It's not like the draft class has star-studded quarterbacks that are going to come in here and change that team from where they are this year to be in 7-8 wins. Like, they got a lot of issues to figure out and dig out. Do you really want that for your Seahawks? Is that something you can foresee? Like, hey, let's just forget it. Screw it. Get rid of everybody. Trade DK. Now you're left with just JSN, because I don't know if you guys watched the presser after Sunday's game against the Rams, but Ty Lockett, he doesn't appear to be coming back. Him saying everyone, the management, the team managers, and all the work that they do, that was his farewell. All right, so now you're left with just JSN and Jake Bobo. I don't know how many wins you're going to get with that roster of receivers. Noah Fant, is he going to return? Actually, they extended him, so he'll be back. Farrell Brown, that's a rental. I don't know if he's going to be back. That's just a risk I don't know if you're willing to take. So the answer for me would be, I would say no. I think you'd better off at where you're at now, and you just need to hit, and that means John Schneider. Stop being cheap, and if you're not going to be cheap, you got to find the dude that's going to execute on the offensive line, because it's been a very long time since they've had that.
So I think I have 2 years in which they could have you could have made a really good argument to do it. So the first one would be after the 2017 season, in which they don't make the playoffs. That's when they fired Darrell Bevell, fired Tom Cable, who was the DC, Chris Richard, fired him. Sherm tore his Achilles. Cam had hurt his neck. Cliff had hurt his neck. And I think they traded Michael Bennett too. Like they were real close to a reset at that point. And Earl had done the come get me thing to the Cowboys. He wanted a new contract. So I think that year, and that's also the year that John went to John Schneider, went to Josh Allen's pro day in Wyoming and was like, yo, wait a minute. This guy might be that dude. Because I think he tried to see Josh Allen when they played the Niners down there. And I think Wyoming might have been playing like San Jose State or something. But then Josh got hurt and didn't play. So that's why John was later like, look, I missed out earlier. I got to see this dude. So I bring that up. That if you really wanted to, that was probably the year. And that one stands out because there were quarterbacks. So that class, the 2018 class, if you remember, that's when Russ's agent that year had heard, yo, what's this I hear about y'all talking to the Browns about the first pick? 'Cause I think the Browns had the first pick and the fourth pick in that draft. And it was like, yo, yeah, they did because they took Baker. I think they took Baker and Denzel Ward, if you could check that for me, in the 2018 draft. But that's when his agent called John and was like, yo, what's up? What you mean? Like, why you at pro days? Y'all looking at quarterbacks? What's going on? And remember, this is a year after they were going to take Mahomes if he had slid to them in the 2017 draft. But the Chiefs were smart, went up and got him. So I think if you really wanted to, in 2018, going into that offseason, if you was like, you know what? We fired the coaches. The Legion of Boom's pretty much done. The Legion of Boom's pretty much done. Yeah, it was Denzel Ward went fourth. Legion of Boom's pretty much done. Fired the coaches. You're keeping Pete and John, but let's hit this reset now, because this class has quarterbacks. Now, the class ended up having Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Rosen. One of these things is not like the others. The answer is Josh Rosen. But the fact that there were at least 4 capable dudes, in that class is one part of the equation. And the fact that was probably the right time if you were going to hit the reset defensively to do it. Like, all right, if we're going to get rid of Earl, we got to get rid of him now. Cam's already gone. We done already cut Sherm. They did trade Mike B. Cliff's going to retire. Marshawn was gone. Like, if you were going to hit the reset, Doug only had 1 year left at that point because he retired in 2018. So if you're going to do it, I think that was the time to really not necessarily bottom out, but just try to say, all right, just reset. Boom, let's hit it. Even if you're going to trade Russ, even if that meant getting rid of Russ, like just getting rid of everybody and just starting over. That would be option one. I'm not guaranteeing that would have worked, but I think if you're going to do it, that's year option one. And then the other one might even sound crazier is after the 2020 season. That's the one where they lost to the Rams in the wild card round in the playoffs at home. The only time they lost a playoff game at home, I think, under Pete. That would have been the time. Russ wanted to go. You hadn't figured out the O-line thing. They played like buns in that game. Your defense was not what you wanted it to be. Your leading sack guy was a safety. It was Jamal. If you really wanted to be like, you know what, whatever assets we got, I don't need to go through all the assets, but let's get rid of Russ. He want to go. He want to cook. Go to Philly. Go wherever, because Philly ended up taking Jalen Hurts in that draft. Or they had just taken Jalen Hurts, maybe not Philly, but just go wherever you want to go. Doesn't matter. Just go. You go. We'll use those to draft another guy. Now that 2021 class also had quarterbacks. Now that class I think sucked, so that might have been more problematic. I think that's the Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence. Who else is in that class? There's one more guy. Whoever went second.
Oh,
Zach Wilson.
Yeah,
Justin Fields, I think, is in that class.
Trey Lance too.
Yeah, Mac Jones. Yeah, so the class ended up not being great. The class had good players in it. Let me see. 2021 draft football reference. I think it had actually really good players in it that just weren't the quarterbacks. Yeah, so Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Penei Sewell, J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, Devontae Smith, Micah Parsons, Rashawn Slater. Like, so the players were good at the top of the draft. It was just none of the quarterbacks outside of T-Law, Trevor Lawrence. But I bring up that year because there was quarterback options, maybe that one as well. Now, obviously, those didn't totally work out, but I do think some of those guys would have been good under Pete because I consider Pete actually the quarterback whisperer. Like, I think, I don't know about Trey Lance. He might just suck. But I think Justin Fields will be better than what we've seen with Pete Carroll. I think Zach Wilson would have been better than what we've seen if he had come to Pete Carroll. I think Mac Jones would have been too, although not great. But I think he would have been better than what we saw. I think making Matt Patricia his OC just kind of broke him in New England. So I think that would be the other year if you were going to do that. Looks like Davis Mills was also in that class. So yeah, those would be the two options. I don't know if they'd be better off per se, because you still have to get right in the draft, and I'm not sure how much I trust John to get that right. But if they were going to do it, those would be the two times. After the 2017 season, when you did make the playoffs and it was very clear Legion of Boom thing was done, or in 2020, when you did the let Russ cook thing, you gave the keys to him, he drove the offense off a bridge. That'd have been a time to maybe get rid of him too, and then just kind of clear house that way. Any of those two seasons would have been the one. And I don't know if they've been better off, but if you were going to do it, that would have been the time.
This is from Awkward Kong. Feels like they got to make some big moves this offseason. So it's simple, Mike. Do they make one, or is it business as usual?
I think it's going to be business as usual until I hear otherwise. And we might have talked about this before, but to cut John some slack, maybe he can't spend because his bosses are capping the spending. You know, maybe they're like, John, you can't go afford the highest paid lineman. We don't feel like paying that money. I don't know. Everybody's got a cash budget they're working with. So that could be the holdup. If it is, John should say that because right now he just looks cheap. So until I hear otherwise, though, I don't think so. Because I really don't think that they'll make the big move that they should. And I'm going to double down on that. I think if they were to pay out somebody like that, I don't trust them to get it right. Because look at the last few big joints they've given out. It don't work. It don't work. I don't really trust John and his whole staff. We're putting this just on John, just to get those things right. I don't really have a lot of faith there. But I just think that the philosophy is unchanged. They're not going to be a big spender in free agency. They're just going to say, let's build through the draft, let's bargain shop, and let's develop our own guys. That's their plan. It's not a stupid plan. Other teams are doing that just the same. Green Bay, Dallas, Pittsburgh, like these teams build, Ravens, those teams build very similarly. They don't usually cash out a ton, maybe here or there. They develop, they draft well. The problem is you have to actually develop and draft well. That's the thing. So no, I don't think there'll be a big move. It doesn't mean you can't fix stuff. You just, like Chris alluded to, you just got to hit. You have to find a Fred Warner in the third round. You got to find more Abe Lucases in the third round. You got to find more Reeks in the fifth round, and Kobe's in the fourth round, and George Kittle's in the fifth round, and Alvin Kamara's in the third round. I'm just rattling off some teams that have just hit, you know. Sam Laporta's in the second round. What was Amon Ra? Fourth round pick, a third round pick, or something like that. He wasn't a premium pick, which is the point. You know, guys like that. You got to find a Terry McLaurin who was a third round pick. You know, you got to fill out your roster with those value guys. It's not impossible. Literally any team can do it in a year, just like they did in 2022. Maybe that's the best way to put it, Chris, is they got to have a 2022 draft again. But the difference is you need like to double that output, probably. You need a Reek and a Spoon in the same class. You know, you need something like that. Find another Leonard or something like that. I think that's what they got to do because I don't think the spending habits are going to change.
Aaron Ahmad, having seen a full season under Mike Macdonald, in hindsight, would you have preferred the Seahawks securing a head coach with primarily offensive expertise, like maybe a Ben Johnson or similar?
No, I can't remember if we talked about this, Chris. I'm a big Mike Macdonald guy, actually. I know it doesn't sound like it sometimes, but I really do think he's a good leader because that's really what I care about for the head coach. Your coordinators, I need you guys to be film nerd, junkies, schemers, whatever. Your head coach, I just need you to lead. I need you to lead and set the tone. Hold guys accountable. Know when to get guys riled up, when to go yell at somebody, when to go pull them to the side and talk to them calmly, when to call somebody out, whether in front of the team, when to call somebody out in private. Just how to do all that. I think Mike is learning and has a good feel for some of that already. I'm on board with Mike and all of those, the leadership parts, the standard, the accountability. Shoot, even with Grubb, he's like, yo, dude, I don't even gotta do nothing else on Monday but fire you. Everything else I figure out, you need to go. It's the same thing when with Laviska Shenault, D. Williams. Oh, y'all ain't holding on to the ball? See ya. Don't gotta talk about it. That way, everybody in the building knows we have a standard here of holding on to the ball. Sometimes that stuff is just so simple. He does some other good things to establish the culture as well. So I think that part he's got a really good handle on. So him as the leader guy, don't have a problem with. It's the inexperience around him, I thought, and the lack of continuity. He don't know nobody on the staff, and nobody else knew each other, and they ain't done their jobs before. That's hard. That is the part that's not even hindsight. That was bad in real time, but I understood it. I disagree with it, but understood it. Yeah, I just think that's where Mike is in a tough spot. It's not Mike as a coach. I think Mike Macdonald is going to be a really good coach. Even if he has to give away the play calling duties at some point, which I think he should, so he can focus on the other stuff. But if they had just hired Mike and then even just had Leslie Frazier run the defense and then brought in a veteran OC, Chris, I think they're in the playoffs. I think that right there gets them with the same roster. I think that gets them in the playoffs.
Is the NFC still wide open?
All right, who's the NFC playoff field? I feel so detached from the
Lions,
playoffs.
Eagles, Buccaneers, Rams, Vikings. Who else is in there?
Commanders, Packers.
Packers, yep.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is. I think it's still pretty wide open. I mean, look, the Vikings just became a juggernaut out the cut for real. Like this is not. I don't know the staying power of them. I think the Lions are going to be here to stay. But I just think if one or two teams is here to stay, it's still open. I don't think any team has established themselves as like the Chiefs, where like it's the Arrowhead Invitational, and you're just going to always have to go through Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl. I don't think that's going to be the case in the NFC. Like the Lions could very well not even have home field next year. So. It could go through Philly, it could go through Green Bay, it could go through Minnesota, it could go through whoever. The Bucks don't seem to be going away, So, yeah, I actually do think it's pretty wide open. I mean, look, this is the other thing about bottoming out, Chris, to your example about you could have just 7 years of where you suck before you get good again. You could honestly suck for just like a couple years too if you hit it right. You hit on enough picks, particularly if one's a quarterback. You pair you a Jaden Daniels with with some other just low key moves like they did. Go get a Jeremy Chin and a Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu. Add a couple pieces on the offense. Got a quarterback. Got a new regime. Boom! Would they win 11 games? So like you can do it. Texans went and got Will Anderson, C.J. Stroud, Tank Dell. They had to suck to get Derek Stingley too. But like. That's just a few draft classes that really turned it around. So you can turn it around. So yeah, I do think it's still pretty wide open. But at the same time, Chris, I would say there still is a pretty defined gap between the really good teams in the NFC and the rest. Like right now, this year, I think it's very clear that the Vikings, Eagles, and Lions are better than everyone else. However you want to rank them as whatever, but those are the three. But that doesn't mean the next year it can't be a new three. Next year we could be saying the Eagles, the Packers, and the Commanders are better than everybody. I do think it's wide open in that way.
Another one from Jeffrey. How was Abe Lucas overall this season? And should they draft the right tackle early in the draft, first or second round?
Yes to the second question. I have to go back and look at Abe a little bit more. But Chris, it just felt like he looked like a dude coming back from injury.
Exactly.
That's yeah. Yeah, and that's not even a knock. It's the literal fact.
Reality.
Yeah, my man had no off season, a couple weeks of practices, but that's not enough to play. The thing about when you're a lineman, bro, you play every snap. Like, so when you come in the game, you're in. It ain't like a receiver or a running back where you can tap your helmet and like, all right, cool, I'm good. Well, don't tell Anthony Richardson that, I guess. But Like you can't just tap your helmet and come out if you're the right tackle. It's like, bro, we need you literally every snap, and you on the field goal team. So even if we score, stay out there. Like we need you to block for that too. Only break you get is kickoff and when we on defense. So I thought he looked okay. Just looked like a guy coming back from injury. He just looked like you can draft a tackle for sure. With tackles and edge rushers, I just never feel like you can go wrong drafting them early, especially if they're just that dude. There's no downside to me for that. But if you're like, oh, we don't want to pay Abe next year, so we'll just draft a tackle, that's fine too. But I think Abe will be fine. I just think this year it was, damn, you came back in week 11 or whatever, and it looked like it. He was still better for what it's worth than all of the other guys. I guess I should have said that first. He looked good, just didn't look like rookie year Abe, which is what I would expect when he missed half the damn year and really couldn't train and have an offseason.
Chris Hamilton, will the Seahawks extend Geno? Should they?
Yeah, this was interesting. Chris, can we pull up this is Mike Macdonald earlier today on Monday. He was asked on his radio show, Mike Macdonald show on Seattle Sports Radio. Actually, the question's in here. So yeah, here's Mike Macdonald Monday morning.
You also mentioned Geno. Does that mean you expect Geno to be back next year as a quarterback?
I got no reason to say no. So I guess, yeah.
What are the next steps?
Dave liked that answer.
Dave, who Mike Macdonald is referring to, is Dave Pearson. He's the head of communications, basically like the PR guy for the Seahawks. So Mike was laughing because that answer sucked. Chris, if we ever get Mike Macdonald on the show, we need to ask him, why wouldn't he just say, yes, I do? That's it.
I don't know. That's maybe that's just his personality at this point. That's just who Mike is, right? Because you guys be asking questions and he'll pause, and I'm like, "Damn, bro, are you there?" And then he'll start answering. So I think that's just his style. He's just very weird and quirky up there.
He's definitely a little weird. Let's try it though. You're right. He's a little quirky. Let's try that. I'm gonna just say the answer that I said. I'm gonna ask a question. All right, cool. I'm gonna be Mike Salk. I love Mike, so I'm not making fun of Mike Salk. All right. All right, you also mentioned Geno Smith. Does that mean that you expect him to be back next year as your quarterback?
Yes, 100%. That's how I would answer. Do you want me to answer how Mike would have answered?
No, that's it. See how simple that was, though?
No, I know, but
it's way better.
You were also talking to well, yeah, never mind. I can't say that because he's definitely 1,000% on Geno. He's been protecting Geno all season, more than we have. So
all season, man.
Yeah, I just think he's just quirky and weird, man. That's his bag. He just, I don't know. Maybe that's a question we'll ask him if we get him on the show. Like, yo, why are you? I don't know how to phrase this type of question, but why can you just give up like upfront answers without? I don't know. I guess so. I mean, I have no reason not to have him back. What?
Yeah, that was weird. I just wanted to poke fun at Mike for that, but I do think they're gonna. I do think they're going to. I don't know what the number will look like. The most interesting thing, though, Chris, is Sherm, Geno and Sherm had that convo on Sherm's pod after the Niners win. Geno said he considers himself to be among the top tier QBs. He said the film shows it, the numbers show it. Cool. We're not here to debate that. I actually think Geno is, for what it's worth. He has really elite skill set for sure. Better than a lot of quarterbacks in this league and a lot of important things. Anyway, I asked Geno, I said, do you think the Seahawks agree with that assessment? Basically, I asked him that. It's the last question in the press conference if you want to go hear it from the post game against the Rams. He said, I asked if he's confident the Seahawks view it the same way. He said, yeah, I am. Yes. That was his response. I don't know if that's true, but he would know better than me. So I'm going to defer to Geno. Because if he's confident that they see him as a top-tier quarterback, he's getting paid. He's getting paid. No question about it. And like I said, Geno knows way better than me. He talked to John. John will never talk to me. He just see me sometimes in the facility. Hi. Maybe he'll slap me on the shoulder and say, what up, bud? And keep walking. That's it. No convo. No. He's not a small talker or nothing. Sucks. Yeah, he said, hey, what's up, bud? How's it going? He don't care how it's going. He's just going to keep walking. But he just being nice. But if Geno was right, which we're gonna assume that he is, that they see him as a top tier guy, then yeah, he's getting paid. I don't know what it is, but he's getting paid.
Quick story time, real quick. You mentioned how John communicates with you guys, and it reminded me of someone at iHeartMedia. This person will be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'll say, "Oh, it's going good. How are you?" And he'll just keep walking. No response. And it's not like he didn't hear me. I said it very loud. I was like, "Hey, how are you?" And he just keeps walking. So you know what he does? Know what he does from now? What I do now is when he say, "Hey, how's it going?" I just say good. I don't even ask him nothing else because he's not gonna respond. It's like he chooses to just ignore everything after he says, "Hey, how are you doing?" Good. How are you doing? Nothing. So I just say good and leave it at that. So I understand, Mike, how you feel when when John Snyder comes up to you and, "Hey, bud, how's it going?" You just thumbs up, bro, because you know he ain't really listening. He off to the next thing. So I get you on that, Mike. This next one comes from Brian Lindy. He needs some help. I'm confused. If Geno's $6 million in incentives that he earned count towards next year's roster bonus in March, and he gets a new deal before then, or cut before then they don't really matter, right? Zero chance he just plays out the final year of his deal, correct?
I wouldn't say zero chance. There is a chance. I would say it's a greater than zero chance, but not much greater than that. Oh, that doesn't make sense. But you guys get what I'm saying. It could happen. It could happen is what I'm saying. No, you're not confused at all. You understand. So what he had, so the language in there is important. Geno has escalators in his contract, not necessarily incentives. They're a little different the way they hit the salary cap and the way they hit Geno's pockets. What they do is they increase the amount of his roster bonus that he's due in March. To get the roster bonus, you got to be, you guessed it, on the roster. But if he's on the roster, by then they will have decided what they want to do, likely probably extending him and then folding that money that he's earned in the roster bonus into the new deal. That's all. So you're right. It probably doesn't matter that much that he hit the escalators. I think he hit he needed the completion percentage to be 70, which is nuts that it was. He needed to, what else did he need to do? A certain amount of passing yards, and what was the other one? It was passing yards. Yes, 10 wins. Thank you. He had one for passer rating too, I think, but he didn't come close to that. So he needed to hit all the things he hit in 2022, basically. His contract was very much structured as, if you do what you did in 2022, we'll keep paying you. It's a 3-year deal, but it's basically a 1-year keep proving it deal that just has mechanisms in it to just reset automatically, essentially. Really interesting way of doing it by John Snyder. He didn't believe in Geno, but he kind of does, but kind of doesn't, you know? And now Geno's like, I need you to believe in me. Bigger sample size, pay up. You know, so, but no, you're not confused at all. You're right. The escalators don't matter that much if you're trying to calculate how the Seahawks factor in an extra $6 million or whatever. You just fold that into his new deal, and you're fine. Or, like you mentioned in the question, you cut him. You cut him, and you don't got to pay him nothing. You cut him before the roster bonus is due. I forget. It's like March 20th or something, 12th, one of those days. You just cut him. You either cut them or you fold that money into a new deal. So either way, you're right. The escalators are not a huge deal. It was made a bit. I feel like we made a big deal of it going into the game because the game didn't matter. So it just was like, what else are we going to talk about? They playing Jimmy G. So that's why it was like talked up a lot and stuff like that. And Geno talked about it. But you're right. It ultimately does not matter that much. Because if you're either going to fold that money into the new deal that you extend him on, or you're just going to cut him and not pay him. So you're right. The escalators ultimately don't matter that much.
Zach Nixon 7. How do we keep Geno, DK, and get better up front?
It's tough, man. I think you got to just view those independent of each other, though. Like, you can keep Geno, you can extend Geno, extend DK, because extensions, as it sounds in the definition of the word, they just push the money out. You can push money out so far. You can be like, hey, bro, Leonard Williams, we're giving you a 5-year extension with some void years in it. So you're on our books till 2038, you know, but your cap hits for the next 3 years are like 10 mil, 10 mil, 10 mil. You know, like you can structure contracts a lot to push money out with the extensions and create money in the immediate. You're basically just swiping it to a credit card. I don't use my credit cards that much because I'm very wary of doing this. But yes, think of it as a credit card and saying, you know what I want to do right now? I want to rent a Tesla. Do I need a Tesla? No, a Camry will get me to work, but I'm about to swipe that to my credit card. Cool. I'll deal with that later. down the road. Right now, I'm driving the Tesla. Just do it later. You can trick out the Tesla, get it painted, whatever. Upgrade it to a Cybertruck, whatever you want to do. But you're just going to do it later. John has always had the ability to do that, and it's what a lot of teams do. Now, there are some drawbacks to that because the owner has to be willing to, let's say you do void years in somebody's contract, and you say, we're gonna throw 3 void years on DK's extension, plus some 2 real years. So it's like a 5-year, and you give DK a new 5-year deal. So with those void years, you're basically saying, DK, here's $60 million in a signing bonus up front. We're going to pay it out over the next 5 years of the length of the deal. So really, your cap hits are real low for about 2 years and they jump. But you're saying, if you're the owner, like, yo, we're going to commit to paying DK this money, whether he's on the team and helping us win games and sell jerseys or not. Some owners are cool with that. The Saints are cool with that. They're going to be paying Taysom Hill until he dies. They're going to be paying Alvin Kamara until his kids are old enough to play for the Saints. Same thing with Cam Jordan. It used to be Marshawn Lattimore, but they're just going to be paying these guys forever. The Browns are going to be paying Deshaun Watson so long, they're going to have made 20 documentaries about him being nasty because of how they just handle contracts. The Seahawks can do the same thing. If they really want, if you really want to do it, the Chiefs gave Mahomes 10-year deal. They just keep restructuring it every year to help build the roster. Do it every year. You can do that. You can do that with DK, or you should do it with a quarterback, but you could do it with Charles Cross. You can do it with Abe. You can do it when it's time to pay Spoon. You can give these guys these deals and you can push money out and add void years. As long as Jody is willing to cut checks, you can do that. I don't know if she is or not. She don't have no cash problem, but that's what it is. So that's the answer to anything. How do you keep that's why it's so dumb, Chris, when people be like, let's get rid of the quarterback and use that money to fix the O-line. You can do both. They're not mutually exclusive. The Broncos got their team back to the playoffs, and they're paying Russ like $40 million now to play for the Steelers. Think about that for a second. They're paying him to play for another team that's in the playoffs while still paying Bo Nix, who I think is deal's fully guaranteed, and then addressing all the other stuff on their roster. So you can do it. You just have to be willing to swipe the card. Not every off. Jerry Jones doesn't swipe the card. The Steelers don't swipe the card too much. The Packers don't swipe the card very much. These teams do it, but not very often. But if you really want to, you throw in some void years and some dummy years and some deferred roster payment bonuses or whatever. You can do a lot of funky stuff with the salary cap to try to compete in the now and keep all your good players. The Saints only just now had to start getting rid of people, Chris. They just now got rid of Marshawn Lattimore. They could have got rid of clean house. The Browns still aren't hitting the reset button, and they extending everybody. So the Seahawks could do the same thing. You don't have to get rid of DK and Geno to fix the O-line. You don't have to do that. You can keep everybody and fix things and add good players too.
This next one comes from Adrian Sacco. 17 touchdowns, 15 interceptions prior to the exhibition game against the Rams on Sunday where they rested their starters. Can you win a Super Bowl with that level of QB play?
No, you can't. Geno has to play better if you're going to get to the Super Bowl. Just get there. Damn, winning it. You're just going to get there for sure. The thing is with Geno and Chris, I feel like there's just this gulf between people who like watch film of Geno and who are just watching on game days. And I hate saying like people know ball or don't know ball because there's plenty of people who watch film and still don't know what they're looking at. I was one of those people for like 2 years. So I'm not even say that you got to watch film to really know. But I bring all that up to say, man, Geno can play. I mean this sincerely. Geno can literally play as good as any quarterback in the NFC is playing right now if you were to give him what the other quarterbacks in the NFC have. And you go look at what the other quarterbacks in the NFC have and what they're making. Only Sam Darnold, I think, really is playing for the low. Like Jalen Hurts got 50-something million a year, and their team is still stacked. I wonder how that works. They didn't have to trade Jalen to pay all their own line? No, they didn't. They drafted well and then gave guys extensions. It's how you do it if you really want to. The Lions, they're paying Jared Goff a lot of money, and they're paying everyone else a lot of money too. You can do it. So yes, I think if you were to give Geno Goff's O-line or Hurts' O-line, hell, even Baker's O-line, or any of their play callers or any of their defenses, except for the Bucs, that defense not good. But like you get the point, if you were to support Geno the way these other quarterbacks in the NFC are supported, Jordan Love included, Jaden Daniels included, Matthew Stafford included, mostly with play caller and O-line. If you were to support him the same way, he wouldn't throw 15 picks with 17 touchdowns. He might still throw 15 picks, but he also might throw like 40 touchdowns. I could see Geno having a very Matthew Stafford year. Do you remember what Matthew Stafford did that year they won the Super Bowl, Chris?
I don't.
Here, I'm going to read it to you. I do.
25, I'll say 30 touchdowns and like 11 interceptions.
The year that the Rams won the Super Bowl, Matt Stafford threw for 4,800 yards, 41 touchdowns, and 17 interceptions, which led the league. But no one views it like, no one was sitting there like, damn, man, Matthew keep turning the ball over too much. No, because he also threw 40 tugs and they won the Super Bowl. But you can live with some of the turnovers that Geno has if it was paired with throwing some tugs, some touchdowns. And I think he would be better in an offense that was just better. Like Mike Macdonald really ain't do nothing Monday but fire Grubb. That shows you how urgent it was. It's very similar to when he got rid of Laviska Shenault. His son was about to be born. His wife was in labor, and Mike said, I don't have time to do anything else today but cut Laviska. I'll deal with the rest later. That's how urgent it was to do that for him. Same thing with Grubb this morning. He's like, I ain't got time to do nothing else. I might not even shower before I go on the radio, but I'm going to fire Grubb. Tell you that now. So I bring up that. It's like, if you put up Geno in those situations, he would be just as good. I almost guarantee that he would.
Axel MTG. So they released the schedule, or not the schedule, the Seahawks opponents for next season. Mike, what is our premature guess for the Hawks record next season?
Ooh, do you have this? God, I had the schedule. You got the schedule in front of you?
I do. All right. So you want me to just list the home games and away games? How you want me to do it?
Yeah, so let's just do we know the division. You're home and away against the Cardinals, Rams, Niners. So let's skip all those. Let's go. We'll start with the home games first that are not the division.
You got the Houston Texans, the Colts, Saints, Bucks, Vikings.
All right, who we on the road against?
On the road, you got the Falcons, Panthers, Jags, Titans, Commanders, Steelers.
That's a tough schedule, man.
I mean, you do get a nice little break, though. I mean, Jesus, man, you got the Titans, ass.
I don't know if the Titans will be bad in 2025, though.
I mean, are they a quarterback away?
I don't even think it's just got to be a quarterback away.
Well, I was looking at how bad Will Levis was and all the highlights I've seen. They
got the first pick, though, so they can get a new quarterback. That's the thing.
I don't know. Okay, well, I mean, I guess this doesn't help, but I would guess right now, I'd say 9 wins again.
I'm probably right there with you. The thing about the Seahawks is, particularly with Mike Macdonald, year one was pretty bad in this regard. One, he continued the tradition of playing down to your opponent because they lost to the Giants.
Oh,
and they only scored 6 points against the Bears. So it's not as if they're just beating up on people that they should beat up on, right? Okay, so that's one. Number two, he was 3-6 at home. So before where you would just chalk up like, oh, they got to come here, so it's going to be tougher. No, teams were coming out here and just whipping up on the Seahawks. That was another way I thought Mike's inexperience showed, because I don't think he kept the same methods of how they handled stuff with the road, like home versus road. I think he kept some of the same road travel procedures, but then at home, it looked like I don't think players were staying in the hotel the whole time like they were under Pete. I think he changed some of that up for the home games and then switched it back. It looked like, so I think he probably needed some more experience there, but whatever. But I'm bringing that up to make the point about even the home games are not like these locks like they used to feel like, like if a bad team came in here, you feel like they was going to beat up on them. No. How many teams you just named do you think are really going to be buns next year?
Probably the Saints.
Yeah, I think the Saints and the Colts are probably the only ones where, right now, today, I don't care what they do, they're probably going to be buns. That's my prediction. Because I'm falling off the Anthony Richardson train, and then the Saints, I've always thought that they should have stopped swiping their credit card about 4 years ago. And they just kept doing it. They're still doing it now. They should stop doing that. Everyone else I could see being better. Titans, I could see easily being better with the first pick and year 2 under their coach, who I do think is doing the right stuff. Panthers are going to be better with Dave Canales. And I think if the Jags get the hire right, they can avoid being buns. They might not be good, but I think they can avoid being buns.
I mean, Mike, they gave up 90 points to the Lions. There's no way they're going to be that much better. I'm sorry.
Who, the Jags?
Yes, I just can't see it. But not to do a Jags podcast, I would chalk that up. If you want to guarantee wins, if you can go bet on that right now, go ahead and put $1,000 on the Seahawks just destroying them. Like, the line might be -10 before we get to the season.
Well, I think you probably would have said that in 2016 when their schedule came out, and then the Jags were 3-13 in 2016, and the Seahawks went to Jacksonville in 2017, and then Blake Bortles bombed all over them that year. Because we probably would have went into that season being like, yo, the Jags, man, they buns. Well, then Doug Marrone got them to 10 wins. And I think they went back to they went to the AFC title game, I think, that year. You know? Yeah, and then Urban Meyer's Jags team was very bad in 2021. Doug Peterson pulls up the next year, fixes it. So that's why I said I think if you get the hire right, you can turn the team around pretty fast. So, and I think their roster has some talent. Not a lot, but some. So, yeah, there's no guaranteed win. So, yeah, I'm with you. Probably like 9 wins. 8, 9. Until I see some like real change. Just 8, 9 wins.
Tweets are dumb. There are rumors going around about people playing their last game as a Seahawk. Who is your player who would be the biggest surprise that they have played their last game for the Seahawks?
Yeah, if that was Tyler's last game, man, I really appreciate it. And we got to do like a Tyler appreciation. I got to talk to him about getting on the show. It won't be this show, but at some point in the offseason. I would be surprised. Let's each pick a guy here. I would be surprised if that was Reek's last game as a Seahawk. That would surprise me. Yeah, that would be my choice.
This gets interesting.
Oh, did I steal your guy?
No. There are just some guys, and I'm like, who could it be? I would guess. Give me Kim Walker. I'd be surprised.
Yes, and yeah. That's good.
His injuries. He's had a lot of them. It's starting to remind me a lot of Chris Carson. Unfortunately, Chris Carson, his career ended because of the injury. So that's a tough one. Like, when he's healthy, he could be one of the top running backs in this league. Having a good old line also helps, but he's had none of those this past season. And my goodness, hell, my fantasy team suffered. All right, selfish. So, but yeah, I would go K9.
Yeah, I'd be surprised by that too. I'd also be surprised by Geno or DK if they were not back. I think that, and I feel like I should articulate this better, but the best way I feel like to put it is I don't think John Snyder's stupid. I think it would be dumb to move on from DK Metcalf. I do. I just do. And then with Geno, I just don't trust him to find a better path. I think Geno's good. I think Geno's good if you support him. I think if you don't support your quarterback, moving on from Geno will do nothing. You don't support your quarterback, go ahead, bring Kirk Cousins in here behind the O-line and see what happens. Go bring in Sam Darnold behind this and see what happens. Geno is masking a lot of the issues more than he's creating them. That's just a fact. Guaranteed fact. There's no way to dispute that. He's part of some problems too. He's made some dumb mistakes, but there are bigger problems than Geno. They're mostly wearing headsets and sitting in booths during the game. Promise you, it's been the case. And it will probably be the case too for a while. But I don't think getting rid of Geno is the answer. You're probably going to get much, much, much worse. Like immediately worse. Like we've seen when guys who are not Geno have had to play in the offense.
At turn 44, we got a few more. If in fact Tyler has played his last snap for the Seahawks, your time covering the team almost mirrors his. Give us a great Tyler story, and where does he rank on your list of Hawks you've covered? Also, will you call him when you buy a crib?
I plan on buying a crib this year, actually, so we'll see if I call Tyler. I might not be in the tax bracket of people he's used to working with. I don't know what live and serve real estate, who they get down with usually. If they're in the Seahawks player bracket, then no, I will not be calling Tyler. I don't know where I rank him. I just think he falls into that bucket of guys I'm never going to forget that I covered, and I'm just always going to be grateful for having a chance to have been around them and talk to them. Tyler, the unique. I don't know if I have a Tyler story, but the most unique. My favorite thing about Tyler is his perspective. That he has a lot of perspective in real time. Like it's impressive. Give an example. I forget which game it was. They had lost for sure. It was this year, and no one wanted to talk. It must have been the Giants, but it doesn't matter which game. They had lost though, and it was one where I'm going up to guys, and they're like, "Yo, you want to talk?" They're like, "No." I'm like, "Not today." Go to another guy. You want to talk? Oh man, no, I can't do it today, Mike. And that happens a lot. I don't call guys out when it happens because I don't care, but it happens quite a bit when they lose. That's why if you notice when they lose, I quote like the same 4 guys because half the team don't want to talk. But this particular time this year, Tyler was sitting there. I was like, "Yo, what's up? You wanna do it?" He was like, yeah. And we do it. I forget what we talked about. But then after I said, like I usually do in these instances, I said, "Man, I really appreciate you being willing to talk, because nobody wanted to today." He was like, "Mike, man, there's going to be one day that I'm sitting there and no one's going to want to ask me anything, because I won't be around. So I'm going to talk as often as I need to while I'm in the moment." I'm paraphrasing, but when he said, that's Tyler, though. That's an example of like Tyler. Like he understood, like right now, like he's living in the moment, understanding like it don't last forever. Maybe that's because he's seen guys get traded and get hurt, whatever. I don't know why he has that perspective, but he does. And that was like, because he's right. A year, 2 years from now, whatever, he'll be on the couch or whatever with his daughter watching football. And when the game ends, that's it. No one's going to ask Tyler what he thought. There's going to be no cameras in his face telling him he had a great game or had a bad game. And he knew that and knows that in real time. And he kind of goes about life that way, appreciating every little moment because he knows it's not forever. So I'd have to think way, way, way more about a good Tyler story. But that his perspective will always stick out to me because it helps you really. I always humanize the players, but Tyler has really put that in perspective. His stuff about why he goes down and doesn't go after all the yak, same thing. It's like perspective, So I don't have a Tyler story, but yeah, that I do think that was his last game as a Seahawk. I do appreciate him. He's one of my all-time favorite Seahawks, right up there with Nino, B-Wags, KJ, Doug. He's in that same group of guys who, I'm never going to forget that I had a chance to be around them.
This last one comes from Jamar. Why do the Seahawks, why do we not get more all-wolf gray uniforms on the road? Are there plans to increase the usage?
I think you only get 4 uniforms. I got to look up the rule, but I think you only get 4. I think you get like 4 uniforms and 2 helmets that you can use each year. And I think the Seahawks right now have their action green. They got their blue on blue. They got their white. And I forget, did they wear wolf gray this year? I think they dumped the wolf gray. Oh, the throwbacks. Duh. Yeah, the throwbacks. So they got their 4. It's the blue on blue. They got the white. Yeah, they have throwbacks. And I just went through. Oh, action green. Yeah. So they got their 4. So that's why. And I mean, I'm not the biggest. I don't know how you guys feel about my fashion choices per se, but I like it. I like what they have now. I like the action green. The throwbacks are cool. Every team has to have a white jersey, I think. And the blue's fine. So that's why. And no, I haven't heard anything about increasing that. That's a league rule thing, though. That's not a Seahawks thing. The number of jerseys you can have. So if you want the wolf gray back, you probably have to give up like action green. And if you want to do that, I'm kicking you off from listening to the show right now. This is a pro action green podcast. Never getting rid of action green. Don't care their record in the uniforms. Action green till we die.
Action green it is, but hey, we want to thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of Seahawks Man to Man. We appreciate all your love and support. It's just the beginning. We're not done yet. We'll figure something out. We know it's the offseason pretty much because guess what? Them boys ain't playing on Saturday or Sunday, but it's all good. We might be able to get some interviews for you because Mike has been building a relationship with a bunch of the guys down there and coaches as well. So we'll try to get something going for you guys because we know how much you enjoyed the interviews that we have done in the past, whether it's KJ, hell, we had Pete Carroll on. It took some time, but, we definitely got the big fella, so that was cool. But we appreciate all the love and support. Make sure you're still hitting us up on TikTok, following us there, as well as Instagram, because we'll have plenty of content. Maybe Mike and I will just run through our top plays or something, have fun with it. We can so much creativity we can do.
We can do a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Hell, maybe we can throw in some of the highlights of our games. Everyone might be.
I don't want to do that. I'll be playing with bad quarterbacks, man.
No, I mean, we got videos of you throwing passes and Quandre Diggs saying he'll pick it off, things of that nature. Just having fun.
Oh,
So
yeah. Oh, okay.
there's so much stuff we can do now that we have the Instagram page. Sky's the limit. So we appreciate all the love and support. Mike, is there anything you want to add before we get out of here?
Yeah, just thank you guys for following with us this season, liking, subscribing, sending in questions, tweets, even comments. We see it all. We appreciate it all. Thank you so much. Like Chris said, we're not done. The cadence will slow down in the offseason because there ain't no games, like Chris said. But we're not done. We'll have stuff for you. So enjoy your week. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow us on every social media platform, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.